What's happening, Boot Junkies? Mike Delgadio here, back with another video on home studio setup for voiceover. I gotta get this out of here. It's not ready for that one yet, so we're gonna start again. Yeah, because I'm not too bright. What's happening, Boot Junkies? Mike Delgadio here, back with another video on home studio setup for voiceover. Today, we're going to take a look at the new gear from 512 Audio, a new budget-friendly spin-off from the company Warm Audio, whose microphones you may be familiar with. I want to say up front, thank you very much to 512 Audio for sending me all of this gear, which leads to the quick disclosure. I've said this before, this video will have the paid promotion link on it since they did send me the gear, and I do get to keep it. However, as always, 512 has no editorial input, and they won't see this video before you do. I'm not paid by them to say anything. Okay, 512 has released two microphones in their new batch of gear. There's the Skylight and the Limelight, both of which clearly I have in the studio and we'll get to listen to during the course of this video. They have also released a pop filter. This one here, it's called the 512 Pop. They've released a set of studio headphones called the Academy, which are right here, and a suspension arm, which the Skylight is currently mounted to. As we talk, I'll switch, over the course of the video, I'll switch between the microphones just so you get a sense of how they sound, and we'll compare them to some other microphones. Since I have it installed here, let's first talk about the microphones. This one here, this is the Skylight, and it's a cardioid condenser microphone. So it's really designed for a studio use, like you have my booth here, this kind of use. At the time I'm making this video, this will run you about $199. It's just plain old microphone, nothing, there's no buttons, there's no switches, anything on there. It's just the microphone. Being a condenser microphone, it does require phantom power, so you'll need to connect this to an interface or a mixer before you connect it to your computer. There's an XLR jack on the bottom. The first thing you note about this microphone, interestingly, when you get it, is the weight. It's a beefy dude. It weighs in at a meaty 1,000 grams. It's a full kilogram for this microphone, 2.2 pounds here in the States. So the first impression of the mic is that it's sturdy and seems really built to last. A lot of times that weight does help for dampening. So if I tap on the body, I said it's pretty good. It doesn't have any, the weight helps. There's no resonance that I detect from the body, so that's good. We do hear the sound coming in, but it doesn't have a ring to it. So that's good. It comes with, the kit comes with this nice heavy-duty shock mount, which mounts via threads on the bottom of the mic. The bottom of the mic itself is threaded. It's low profile, made of metal, seems super durable. So while we're here, why don't we just tap on various things to see if the shock mount is effective. Why don't I bring in a couple of other microphones just so you get a sense of how this thing sounds, and so you'll be able to hear the differences. I find it's easier to judge a microphone by just putting it in context to see if you like one more than the other. So the first one I'm going to bring in is this one here. This is the TechZone Audio Stellar X2. And I'll continue talking about the Skylight, but you'll at least get a chance to hear the difference between the two. The specs in the 512 books don't include a self-noise figure, which in itself is not a great sign. And the sensitivity of the Skylight is lower than that of other condenser mics. So that means I need to have the gain up higher on my interface, which can give the overall impression of a higher noise floor. That said, I haven't found this to be an incredibly noisy microphone, although it is somewhat noisier. There's an underlying hiss that's not present with the Stellar X2. I'll be quiet for a moment so you can test it. Otherwise, the specs they are as expected. The frequency range is from 20 Hz to 20 kHz, although there is no response graph. So in addition to there being no noise floor number, the EIN number, there's also no response graph. So they don't disclose sort of how much attenuation or boosting there might be, whether or not it's a presence boosted mic or anything like that. The maximum SPL is 144 dB, which is quite loud considering that there's no pad switch on this mic. So that means that you can place this in front of the loudest sources, way louder than we would ever get to in VoiceOver. But since we don't have the frequency response graph, having a couple of different microphones will help give us a sense of where this microphone sort of fits. Okay, so that's the Stellar X2. Let's bring in another microphone just so we can get a sense of it. Now I've brought in, just for the another comparison, this is the Rode NT1A. This one will set you back about $230. Notice I have the pop filter here, and that's because there is a pop filter in the kit for the Skylight. And from what I can tell, it's a knockoff. This windscreen is a knockoff or an homage to the Wintec pop guard that you saw on the Stellar X2, this right here. At least Wintec was the first company I saw that made this style of pop filter. It appears that Wintec has discontinued this, so I'm not surprised that there are companies making, knocking them off and making their own version of it. Sorry, just want to get the Rhodes pop filter so it's not blocking the Skylight's capsule there. This kind of pop filter is nice. It's nice and low profile enough that you can sort of be on camera like this if you want. It doesn't hide the mic too much. The basket and the grill on the Skylight is interesting. It's super robust for sure, but there is a lot of stuff between you and the capsule. There's both this thick metal grill that goes all the way around, and behind that there's the metal wool, for lack of a better word, this spiral nest of metal that's behind it. I think that's all there to try and help moderate any plosives, but I've seen in my waveforms that even with that wool and the supplied pop filter in place, I do get signs of plosiveness, so I will need to be very careful of your mic technique when using the Skylight, something to be aware of. But maybe all of this stuff there in between, I can only guess it's there to maybe try and warm up the microphone by cutting the highs a little bit. Because when I compare it to other microphones, the Skylight does seem to have less high end, which makes it seem sort of mid-range forward. So you may find that if you do have a very sibilant voice or a very sharp S sound, that this design might actually work in your favor. And here's the NT1A's floor. Okay, let's switch over to the Limelight so you can hear that. But before I put that in, you do need to know that the Limelight is a dynamic microphone, and it will sound different from the Skylight. So I don't really want you to compare the two because they'll sound different. Expect it, in fact, to sound different. Give your ears a second to adjust before making a judgment call on whether or not you prefer the sound of that mic, because dynamics do sound different. I'll switch it out now. Now I've switched over to the Limelight. Now this is a different beast altogether. And it's always risky to switch to a dynamic microphone after listening to a condenser because there are usually some pretty obvious differences between them. So if you find that there's a big difference, just give it a second. Let your ears sort of get adjusted to it. The Limelight is a dynamic hypercardioid pattern microphone. So it's got a narrower pattern and it's a dynamic microphone. At the time I'm making this video, it's about $199. You also see that it's an end address microphone. I turned to speak into the end of it. And it is a hypercardioid pattern. So it has a narrower focus of sensitivity, which can be beneficial in a less than ideal recording situation. Can help reduce a little bit of the reverb. It won't hear the reverb so much from sort of an untreated, like a bedroom studio or podcasting studio. Something like that. Now, if the Skylight is a heavy, beefy microphone, or the Limelight is quite light by comparison, 1/3 the weight at only about 350 grams. It actually feels lighter than it looks. When you pick it up, it feels light. And I'm surprised by that. It doesn't convey the same sense of quality when you hold it. The Limelight does have a switch on the bottom near the XLR jack. It's a low-cut switch, and it's unfortunately down here on the bottom. This will cut away the very lowest bass frequencies from about 100 hertz down at 12 decibels per octave. So it's a pretty sharp cut for the bass. That switch is probably mostly designed to help reduce proximity effect. So if you do tend to eat the mic and get right up close to it, the dynamics, this pattern and getting up close to it can give you a sense of muddiness, I find, on this on the microphone. So you may need to switch that off. But if I'm being kind, the switch placement, as you could see, normally I just switch it. When it's mounted in the microphone like this, you can see that it's blocked. So in order to check the difference as you flip the switch from one to the other, you have to physically remove it. So if I want to flip the switch and listen, what you'll hear. Oh, that's interesting. I flipped the switch over and suddenly got a 60 hertz hum. You hear that? I don't know where that came from, but as soon as I flipped that switch. But this is an example of this sound. That hum may be in my studio, although I don't know why flipping the switch would do that. But this is at least gives you an example of hearing it without that bass. So if you are trying to eliminate that proximity effect as you get closer to it, that switch can help. You still may need to EQ it a little bit. But as you can see, the switch placement, fixing it is a pain in the butt. I'm going to flip that switch back now because I always use it flat. Just like that, the buzz stopped. I don't know what that would be. Okay, when I first saw the Limelight, I'll be honest, the very first mic that I thought of, that I was immediately reminded of, was this one. This is the H&A AC50, also a dynamic microphone. This one will run you about $99-ish. This is also a dynamic microphone. And the reason I thought of it is the switch placement on the bottom is identical. The printing is identical. The stripes and the microphone name is essentially identical. Now, the AC50 is a cardioid dynamic microphone. So it's not the same microphone, but you can see just how similar they look. You could easily think that these were both from the same company. The AC50, as I said before, is about half the price at $99, and you can judge just how the Limelight stacks up against the AC50. They are a little bit different. Now, the Limelight says it's designed in Austin. That could be the circuitry or selection it's designed. But I think it's pretty clear that they're buying their mic bodies probably from the same company. That whoever makes this mic body, it's probably the same company that makes it. So internally, I don't know what 512 has done different than H&A, but the mic bodies, they seem really similar. Almost identically. Very, very similar. I can't pull the grill. Oops, plosive, sorry. I can't pull the grill off the Limelight, so I can't see how much foam is under the grill. So as far as stopping plosives, you hear it. It doesn't do great at stopping plosives. I did conduct a little unscientific test, and there is a little bit of foam underneath there, but I have experienced that plosives still will come into the microphone. I would have liked to seen the microphone come with a clown nose. Something like this that could fit onto the end of the mic. But so far as I know, you might have to find an aftermarket one that would just fit to this dimension because there isn't one in the box. Or you'd have to use sort of the other pop filter design, which is a little bit harder to use with the dynamics. It doesn't really look great either. I'm normally thinking of a foam clown nose. Okay, you heard it before, but let's just see how the mic does with handling noise. It's a lot. It's a lot in my book. There's a lot of handling noise. Even the H&A even has less. $99, $199. Too much handling noise in my book. So you will need to sort of keep your grubby mitts off the mic when you're using it. It's a thing. Also note that there is no external shock mount, and this is probably my biggest gripe for the Limelight, since it is very transmissive as I tap on the boom arm or tap on the desk. You can hear it. There's just so much noise that comes in, and this rigid mount is not doing it any favors. There's no shock mount. And you can hear just how much is transmitted in. And I will also note it's the exact same mount as on the AC50. Just sort of further validating these must have come from the same place. Okay, so that's the H&A 512 comparison for whatever that's worth. These microphones are mounted in the 512 suspension arm. These arms are about 20 inches long, clamps onto the desk, just like most suspension arms. It's well made. You saw it held up a really heavy mic, no problem. Its springs are internals. It doesn't creak when you move it. It might transmit sound in, but it's actually a really solid, fine suspension arm. And it'll set you back about $79, at least at the time I'm making this video. I would expect it to provide you years of sturdy, reliable, if unremarkable service, just what you'd expect it to do. If I did have a complaint, and this is just because of I know what else is out there in the market, this suspension arm has a hole, a channel here where you slide the cable through and you can feed it to sort of hide this cable. But in doing so, you have to cut the XLR cable off or build your own XLR cable. You got to cut the jack off and solder it on after the cable has been fed through. At this price point, at $79, maybe some people will do that, but I think a lot of people are not. They're going to just end up Velcroing their cable to the suspension arm, which doesn't look great. Now, I have an identically priced suspension arm, again, unfortunately from H&A, that has this nice open channel with a plastic cover, so you can just tuck the cable in there and cover it with a plastic cover and hide it. Looks exactly the same. And that's, unfortunately, the exact same price as the 512. And if you put them side by side, visually, the 512 arm and the H&A arm are very, very similar, virtually identical. So again, I wonder if 512, they didn't design that. They're just buying it from the same supplier in China that probably is also supplying H&A. So at $79, it's okay, but it's not exceptional. That's just my impression. It's unfortunate. Okay, next there is the 512 pop filter. And unfortunately, it's also only okay. The design appears to imitate a similar style as my favorite pop filter. I got it right over here. My favorite pop filter, which is the Stedman PS101. Whoops, sorry. The 512 pop filter adopts or co-ops this grill design, this mesh design as the Stedman. And that, at least on the Stedman, that design is a very specially shaped mesh. It's got a specific design to it. And on the Stedman, at least, its design is to deflect air blasts down at an angle and away from the diaphragm on the mic. Here, I have recorded a demonstration here. Watch as I demonstrate with a flame how the air should be deflected. So imagine the flame here is the capsule of the mic. As we speak into the Stedman, That's what we're looking at first. As I speak into it, the flame remains relatively still. If I blow into the filter, a sustained wind into the filter, we can see that the flame remains still. The air is actually being deflected downward away from the flame. I actually have to move the flame into where the air has been redirected to before it goes out. Now, if I put in the 512 pop filter, it doesn't execute this design nearly as well. And you can see that the air actually goes right through the filter and disturbs the flame. The air just goes right through and the blasts end up right in the capsule. Not nearly as effective. At $40, it costs the same as the Stedman. But in my experience, it does not do nearly as effective a job as the Stedman at deflecting air away, its main job. So take that into consideration. Also, the pop filter that they released, it only mostly works with the suspension arm. Since they sell the suspension arm and the pop filter, you'd think that they'd make these go together. It clamps on, but the design of this is really to fit onto a round tube, like a floor microphone, and not a square tube like most of the suspension arms. So if you're buying both the suspension arm and the pop filter thinking that they might be most compatible, they're only mostly compatible. It works, but it's not like a perfect fit. In fact, the Stedman suffers from the same problem. It's designed to mount onto a round tube, but they offer a small plastic adapter you can buy to fit onto the clamp to make it work with the square tube suspension arms. Now, luckily that clamp does fit on the 512 pop filter, but it kind of feels like cheating, doesn't it? Okay. Finally, there are the Academy Studio headphones. And here again, unfortunately, to me, these are just okay. They come with a case and 2 different cable lengths. And in what seems to be a little bit of a theme here for 512, these are visually extremely similar to the Audio-Technica AT-M40X headphones. Side by side, if you took the logos off, you'd see that they are almost identical in appearance. And they share the same price point at $99. They both offer a removable locking cable, padded headband. They open and close in a similar way. Similar looking closed back design. Similar looking? I mean, how similar? They're really similar. I will say the ear pads of the Academy are considerably softer, but the cups, you can see, they're virtually the exact same size. Now, the Audio-Technicas, they do fold up into a more compact space, so if you want to throw them in a bag, the Academies don't fold up. They just fit right into their case. But once you put sound through them, for me, the sound difference is pretty significant, and unfortunately, it's not in the Academy's favor. The AT-M40Xs, they've rightfully earned a pretty good reputation for their sound. Good, rich sound, deep bass, especially given they're only $99. On the other hand, the Academies, for me, have been considerably thinner sounding, with significantly less bass and just generally, for me, a thin sound. Personally, for me, over the long listening, I found that these have been unfortunately somewhat fatiguing to listen to for a long period. I wanted to see if there were any other headphone reviewers out there that were hearing the same things as me, but I couldn't find a video reference for these yet. Hopefully at some point there will be videos that can offer more scientific rundown of the Academy performance and either corroborate or refute my impressions, but that's what I'm hearing. I'll just leave it at saying that these are not for me, and I would probably make a different choice with my $99, including the Audio-Technica AT-M40Xs, or maybe something like the Sony 7506 headphones. Okay. If you want my overall impressions of the whole product line, it's this. As a lower-priced division of Warm Audio has a reputation of taking sort of really, really high-end equipment and making a more affordable sort of knockoff is not the right word, an homage to those other products. It seems as though 512 is essentially following that same playbook, but unfortunately, many of these products, they're only sort of fair to middling offerings. In some cases, they're just a poor imitation of a better product, like the pop filter and the Academy headphones. And unfortunately, it's at the same price point as that competition. If it was significantly less, you might judge it differently. The Limelight microphone is just okay at the $199 price point, and given its similarities to the $99 competitor, I wonder just how much better the Limelight is at twice the price. Now, finally, I think the Skylight is probably the best offering of the 512 product line. You do need to be careful with the right mic technique, given the, even the robust wind protection that's there. You may need a separate, better pop filter for it. But if you like the way that sounds, and there are people that's the right sound for, then it should serve you well. It's the one piece that seems to be unique. I don't know of any other mic that looks like that. And it does seem to be unique. It seems to be very robust, and it should last. Those are my impressions. Well, that's all I have for you today. I really hope that helps. I hope it does. Now, go get yourself a microphone, any microphone, but get yourself a microphone. Get out there and record something amazing. Thanks. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.